Stop the meeting! The words cracked through the boardroom like shattered glass. Every head turned. The silver pen in Richard Whitmore's hand froze less than an inch above a signature worth $3 billion. The room went silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the faint rattle of ice in crystal water glasses. Maya Johnson stood near the doorway, one hand still gripping the handle of a cleaning cart. Her dark housekeeping uniform looked painfully out of place among the tailored suits and polished Italian shoes surrounding the conference table. For a second, nobody spoke. Then a few executives exchanged confused looks. One of them laughed. Another smirked. Richard's pale blue eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" he said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Maya swallowed hard. She could feel 20 pairs of eyes burning into her. "If you sign that agreement," she said, forcing the words out, "you could lose control of your company." A nervous chuckle spread around the table. Someone muttered, "This has to be a joke." Another executive leaned back in his chair. "Since when do maids review billion-dollar contracts?" More laughter followed. Maya felt heat rise into her cheeks. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to grab her cart and leave. But the image she had seen 10 minutes earlier would not leave her mind. The copied document. The strange subsidiary name. The clause buried deep in the final pages. Richard slowly placed his pen down. Not because he believed her. Because he was irritated. "Who let her in here?" he asked. His voice was calm, but the tension underneath it was sharp enough to cut steel. Nobody answered. At the far end of the table, Ethan Cole adjusted his tie. His smile never moved. "She is housekeeping," Ethan said smoothly. "I am sure she means well." The room relaxed slightly. Maya did not. Something about Ethan's smile made her stomach tighten. Richard turned toward her. "You interrupted a meeting that took 6 months to arrange." His gaze drifted to the cleaning cart beside her. "You are here to empty trash cans, not advise executives." The humiliation hit like a physical weight. Several people looked away. Others watched with open amusement. Maya lowered her eyes for a moment. The polished marble floor reflected the bright ceiling lights above. Her reflection looked small. Invisible. Exactly how people usually saw her. Then she remembered her father sitting beside her at the kitchen table years ago, teaching her how to read financial statements while rain tapped against the windows. She remembered the company that destroyed everything her family owned. And she remembered seeing that same company name hidden inside today's merger documents. Her heart pounded harder. "Sir," she said quietly, "please check page 74. Ethan's smile flickered for the first time. Only for a second. But Maya saw it. Richard stood from his chair. The movement instantly killed the remaining laughter. "Security." The word echoed through the room. Maya's throat tightened. 2 security officers appeared near the entrance. "Escort her out." One officer stepped forward. Maya's fingers tightened around the cart handle. This was it. She had lost her job. Maybe more. But then something unexpected happened. Before security could reach her, Richard glanced down at the contract one last time. His eyes paused. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. A tiny shift. A wrinkle forming between his brows. Then he slowly flipped to page 74. The room became deathly still. Ethan Cole stopped smiling. And for the first time all morning, Richard Whitmore looked genuinely concerned. The pages whispered as Richard Whitmore flipped through the contract. No one moved. No one even reached for their water. The only sound in the boardroom was the faint buzz of fluorescent lights reflecting off the glass walls 70 stories above Manhattan. Maya stood frozen beside her cleaning cart while security waited only a few feet away. Then Richard stopped turning pages. His eyes locked onto a paragraph near the bottom of page 74. The muscles in his jaw tightened. Across the table, Ethan Cole casually adjusted his cufflinks. Too casually. Richard read the clause again. Then a third time. The room felt smaller. Hotter. "Who drafted this section?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. Several executives exchanged nervous glances. Ethan finally leaned forward. Our legal partners recommended the language. His voice sounded smooth. Practiced. But something had changed. Maya could hear it. Richard's finger remained pressed against the paper. This transfers voting control if certain performance benchmarks are missed. His voice had become dangerously quiet. One attorney suddenly sat upright. That cannot be right. Chairs scraped against the floor as legal advisors reached for their copies. Pages began turning rapidly. A few seconds later, the color drained from one lawyer's face. Then another. Maya watched the realization spread around the table like a crack racing through glass. The laughter was gone. Every trace of it. Richard slowly lifted his eyes toward Maya. For the first time, he was not looking through her. He was looking at her. How did you see this? He asked. Before Maya could answer, Ethan stood. This is ridiculous. We are delaying a historic merger because of a housekeeper. The word hung in the air. Housekeeper. Maya felt it land exactly as intended. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. Richard did not look away from her. Answer the question. Maya swallowed. Her palms felt damp. My father taught corporate finance before he passed away. Silence. Ethan laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. And now we are trusting billion-dollar decisions to bedtime lessons? A few people smiled nervously, but nobody joined his laughter. Richard remained motionless. Maya could feel dozens of eyes studying her now. Not mocking. Evaluating. That was somehow worse. There is more, she said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ethan's head turned toward her instantly. The change in his expression was small but unmistakable. Fear. It vanished almost immediately. But Maya saw it. Richard saw it too. More? He asked. Maya nodded. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The company listed in Appendix C. One of the attorneys quickly flipped pages. Harbor Strategic Holdings, he read aloud. Maya's stomach tightened. She had spent years trying to forget that name. That company destroyed my father's firm, she said quietly. The same acquisition structure. The same hidden transfer clause. The room became still again. Even the attorneys stopped turning pages. Richard's gaze sharpened. You are saying this has happened before? Yes, sir. Ethan stepped forward. Enough. His voice cracked slightly. It was subtle. But everyone heard it. The attorney nearest him suddenly frowned. Wait. His finger moved down a page. Richard, you need to see this. The attorney's face had turned pale. Richard crossed the room and took the document. Maya watched his eyes scan the page. Then stop. His entire posture changed. Not anger. Not confusion. Something worse. Betrayal. A long silence followed. Nobody dared speak. Finally Richard looked up. Not at Maya. Not at the attorneys. Directly at Ethan Cole. Why? Richard asked slowly. Is your private investment company listed as a beneficiary? The room exploded into shocked whispers. Ethan's face went white. Maya felt her pulse spike. But before anyone could react further, one of the attorneys stared at another document and whispered 3 words that made Richard freeze completely. Sir, there is another signature. Sir, there is another signature. The attorney's voice barely rose above a whisper, yet it hit the room harder than a fire alarm. Every conversation died instantly. Richard Whitmore snatched the document from the attorney's hand. The overhead lights reflected sharply off the polished conference table as his eyes raced across the final page. Maya could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. Nobody else moved. Nobody breathed. Then Richard stopped. His face went completely still. Ethan Cole noticed it immediately. Richard, he said carefully, you are overreacting. No one looked at him. Richard slowly lifted his eyes from the page. There was something different in them now. Something colder. This signature belongs to someone who has been dead for 11 years. Silence crashed over the room. One executive dropped his pen. Another stared in disbelief. The attorney nearest the window leaned closer. That is impossible. Richard placed the contract flat on the table. My father. The words landed like concrete. Maya felt a chill move through her chest. Richard's father had founded the company decades ago. His signature should not have existed anywhere near a modern merger agreement. Yet there it was. Ethan's confidence cracked for the first time. It must be an administrative error. Nobody believed him. Richard looked directly at Ethan. You expect me to believe my father's signature accidentally appeared on a document finalized 3 weeks ago? Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Around the room, phones quietly appeared beneath conference tables. Screens glowed. People were recording now. The atmosphere had changed. This was no longer a merger meeting. It was a collapse. Maya stood near the doorway, trying not to draw attention. Yet for some reason, Richard kept glancing toward her. The woman everyone had laughed at 30 minutes earlier was now the reason the entire room had frozen. One of the senior attorneys adjusted his glasses and leaned toward the document. Wait. His finger moved lower down the page. There is metadata attached to the digital record. He turned toward the screen mounted on the wall. A few quick keystrokes echoed through the room. The monitor flickered. Rows of information appeared. Timestamps. User logs. Authorization trails. The attorney's face drained of color. Oh my God! Richard stepped closer. What? Nobody answered immediately. The attorney swallowed. The document was altered from inside this building. A wave of whispers spread across the room. Richard's expression hardened. Which office? The attorney hesitated. Maya noticed his hands trembling. Office 6108. The room went silent again. Ethan stopped breathing for a second. Maya saw it happen. Richard saw it too. Office 6108 belonged to Ethan Cole. Every eye in the room turned toward him. For several long seconds, Ethan said nothing. Then unexpectedly, he laughed. The sound felt wrong. Hollow. You cannot seriously think I forged a dead man's signature. Richard took one step forward. Can you explain why the edits came from your office? Ethan's smile disappeared. Maya watched sweat gather near his collar. Tiny beads glimmering beneath the conference room lights. The powerful executive who had dominated the room all morning suddenly looked trapped. Then something strange happened. One of the younger analysts near the back stood up. Sir? Everyone turned. The young man looked terrified. I need to tell you something. Ethan's head snapped toward him. The analyst immediately lowered his eyes. But it was too late. Richard noticed. Speak. The young analyst swallowed hard. 3 nights ago, Mr. Cole ordered everyone out of the office after midnight. Ethan stepped forward. Do not do this. The analyst ignored him. His voice shook. He said he was working on final merger revisions alone. The room exploded into whispers again. Richard stared at Ethan. Ethan stared at the analyst. Maya felt the pressure building like a storm trapped inside glass walls. But before anyone could say another word, a notification suddenly appeared on the massive screen at the front of the room. A new email. Sent exactly 4 minutes ago. The sender's name made Richard freeze. Maya's heart nearly stopped. Because according to every company record in existence, the person who had just sent that email was supposed to be dead. The email notification glowed on the giant screen like a warning flare. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The cold white light from the display reflected across the glass walls and polished steel fixtures, turning every face in the room pale. Richard Whitmore stared at the sender's name. His father. Jonathan Whitmore. Dead for 11 years. Yet somehow, an email stamped 4 minutes ago sat in his inbox. The low hum of the ventilation system suddenly sounded deafening. Around the table, executives exchanged frightened glances. Several phones were openly recording now. Ethan Cole looked ready to say something, then stopped. For the first time all morning, he seemed unsure of himself. Richard took a slow breath. "Open it." The attorney hesitated. "Sir, open it." A single click echoed through the room. The message appeared on the screen. 3 short lines. Nothing more. "If you are reading this, someone betrayed you. Trust the girl. Do not sign anything." The room exploded into whispers. Maya felt every eye swing toward her. Not admiration. Suspicion. Shock. Confusion. She suddenly wished she were invisible again. One executive stood. "This is absurd." Another shook his head. "Someone hacked the system." Ethan seized the opening immediately. "Exactly." His voice came back stronger. Sharper. "Someone is manipulating all of us." He pointed directly at Maya. "And somehow she is always at the center of it." The accusation landed hard. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Several people looked at her differently now. The same room that had briefly started believing her was turning again. Richard remained silent. That silence was worse than anger. Maya could hear the distant buzz of traffic 70 floors below. The room felt hotter. Smaller. "I did not send that email," she said quietly. Ethan laughed. "Convenient." Richard finally spoke. "Enough." The single word cut through the room. Yet his eyes remained fixed on Maya. Not trusting. Studying. Searching. Maya hated it. She had spent years being ignored. Somehow this felt worse. Then something caught her attention. A tiny detail. The email header remained visible on the corner of the screen. Her pulse jumped. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Wait." Immediately several executives groaned. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Of course." Richard folded his arms. "What now?" Maya stared at the screen. "That email was not sent 4 minutes ago." The room went silent again. Ethan smiled. "And how would a housekeeper know that?" Maya ignored him. Her eyes never left the display. "The timestamp is local." She pointed toward the screen. "But the server routing code is not." A few attorneys frowned. One moved closer. Maya's heart hammered. She knew she was risking everything again. "The email was scheduled years ago." Nobody laughed this time. The attorney nearest the monitor suddenly leaned forward. His expression changed. "She is right." The room froze. Fingers flew across keyboards. Monitors refreshed. Data streams appeared. Richard stepped beside the attorney. "Explain." The attorney swallowed. "This message was created 11 years ago." A wave of shock rippled through the room. Maya could almost hear people's hearts stopping. Richard's face lost color. Ethan's confidence disappeared completely. "That is impossible," someone whispered. "No," the attorney replied quietly. "It was programmed to deliver only if a specific merger sequence was triggered." Nobody spoke. Richard stared at the screen. His father had known. Somehow, 11 years ago, Jonathan Whitmore had anticipated this exact situation. The realization hit the room like a tidal wave. Maya watched Richard's hand tighten against the edge of the conference table. The billionaire who controlled thousands of employees suddenly looked like a son searching for answers. Then another alert appeared. A sharp electronic chime sliced through the silence. Everyone looked up. A second file had just unlocked automatically. Protected. Hidden. Archived for more than a decade. The file name appeared across the screen in bold letters. For Richard only. "If Ethan Cole is present." Nobody breathed. Ethan's face went completely white. And Richard slowly reached for the file as if he already knew opening it might destroy everything. Richard's hand hovered over the file. Nobody in the boardroom spoke. The only sounds were the faint whir of the ceiling vents and the soft buzz of phones recording every second. The words on the screen seemed to glow brighter with every passing moment. For Richard only. "If Ethan Cole is present." Ethan's face had lost all color. Beads of sweat gathered along his temple despite the cold air pouring from the vents. Richard noticed. So did everyone else. Slowly, he opened the file. A video appeared. The timestamp read 11 years ago. The image flickered to life. Gasps rippled through the room. Jonathan Whitmore appeared on the screen, older but unmistakable. His voice filled the boardroom. "Richard, if you are watching this, then I was right." Nobody moved. Richard's fingers tightened against the table edge. His father's eyes stared directly into the camera. "There is one person in this company you must never trust." Every eye shifted toward Ethan. The executive's breathing became visible now. Sharp. Uneven. Jonathan continued. "I have hidden evidence in 3 separate locations. If a merger involving Harbor Strategic Holdings is ever proposed, it means the plan has reached its final stage." The room erupted into whispers. Investors exchanged stunned looks. Attorneys scrambled through documents. Maya stood frozen beside the doorway, her cleaning cart suddenly forgotten. The same people who laughed at her an hour ago were now hanging on every word connected to the warning she had uncovered. Yet somehow the pressure on her felt heavier than ever. Ethan suddenly stepped forward. "This proves nothing." His voice cracked. He immediately regretted it. Everyone heard. Richard turned slowly. "Nothing?" Ethan straightened his jacket. "A dead man's suspicion is not evidence." The room fell silent again. Richard's eyes narrowed. For the first time all day, anger began pushing through his control. "Then explain why every warning points to you." Ethan opened his mouth, but another sound interrupted him. A notification alarm echoed through the room. Sharp. Metallic. Everyone looked toward the wall display. Another system alert had appeared. Unauthorized account access detected. The attorneys exchanged worried glances. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" Maya's stomach dropped. She stared at the screen. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The alert flashed again. Then another. Then another. A cascade of warnings flooded the display. Investor records. Internal accounts. Ownership transfers. The boardroom transformed into chaos. Phones rang. Assistants rushed in from the hallway. Richard's chief attorney looked horrified. "Sir, somebody is moving assets right now." The room froze. "How much?" Richard asked. The attorney swallowed hard. "Hundreds of millions." A wave of panic swept through the executives. Maya felt her pulse hammering. Then she noticed something nobody else seemed to see. A tiny code string flashing in the corner of the display before disappearing. The same sequence she had seen earlier buried inside the merger documents. "Stop," she said. Nobody listened. Voices crashed over one another. "Stop!" This time the room paused. Richard looked at her. Several executives looked annoyed. Ethan actually smiled. "Of course. Now the maid is our cybersecurity expert too." A few nervous laughs escaped. Maya ignored them. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen. "They want you distracted." Silence. Richard stared at her. "What?" Maya pointed. "Those transfers are not the real attack." The attorney frowned. "How do you know that?" Maya's throat tightened. Every eye in the room was on her again. Judgment. Doubt. Pressure. "Because whoever built this planned it years ago." She pointed toward Jonathan's frozen image on the screen. "Your father knew the merger was bait." Richard's expression changed. "Bait for what?" Maya looked toward the ownership records flashing across the display. Her face went pale. "For the final transfer." The attorney's keyboard clattered as he searched deeper into the system. Suddenly he stopped. His hands froze above the keys. "Oh no." The room went silent. Richard stepped forward. "What is it?" The attorney looked up slowly, terror visible in his eyes. "Sir," his voice barely worked, "the company is no longer registered under your name." Every sound disappeared from the room. Richard stared at him. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Then the attorney swallowed and spoke the words that made Maya's blood run cold. And according to the records, it was transferred 12 minutes ago to someone who is sitting in this room right now. The words hung in the air like smoke. It was transferred 12 minutes ago to someone who is sitting in this room right now. Then nothing. No shouting. No gasps. Just silence. The kind of silence that felt heavier than sound. The giant display continued glowing above the boardroom, bathing everyone in cold blue light. Richard Whitmore stood motionless beside the conference table. His company. His father's company. Gone. Around him, executives stared at one another with growing suspicion. A phone vibrated softly against polished wood. Nobody reached for it. Maya Johnson felt every eye in the room drifting toward her again. Not because she had done anything. Because she was the only person who no longer looked surprised. She stood quietly beside the cleaning cart, hands folded around the handle. Calm. Too calm. Richard noticed. You knew something. His voice sounded tired now. Dangerous, but tired. Maya met his gaze. I suspected something. Ethan Cole laughed softly. The sound felt forced. Amazing. Every mystery somehow leads back to her. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Earlier, they would have agreed. Now nobody seemed certain. The attorney continued digging through records. The clicking of keys echoed through the room. Fast at first. Then slower. Then he stopped completely. His face tightened. Richard turned. What is it? The attorney swallowed. The ownership transfer was authorized using a secondary verification sequence. Richard frowned. My sequence? No. The attorney's voice dropped lower. Your father's. Silence returned. Maya watched something break behind Richard's eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. He slowly looked toward the frozen image of Jonathan Whitmore still displayed on the screen. 11 years ago, the old man had known this day would come. Somehow. Some way. The realization settled across the room like a shadow. One investor lowered his phone. Another executive quietly sat down. Nobody looked at Maya the same way anymore. Richard noticed it too. Earlier she had been the maid who interrupted his meeting. Now she was the person standing closest to the truth. That frightened everyone. Including him. Why are you so calm? Richard asked. Maya hesitated. The room waited. She could hear the faint hum of the building's electrical system behind the walls. Because this is not the end of the plan. Several heads snapped toward her. Ethan visibly stiffened. Richard stepped closer. What does that mean? Maya glanced toward the display. Toward Jonathan's frozen face. Whoever built this wanted everyone focused on ownership. The room remained silent. But ownership is only valuable if the company still exists. Nobody spoke. The sentence landed harder than anyone expected. The attorney suddenly looked back at his monitor. His expression changed. Richard saw it immediately. What? The attorney did not answer. His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. Window after window opened. Financial records. Corporate filings. Asset inventories. Then his hands stopped. The color drained from his face. Oh my God! The room tightened. Richard moved toward him. Tell me. The attorney looked up slowly. There is another layer. Maya closed her eyes for a second. She already knew. The attorney's voice barely worked. The merger was never the objective. Several executives stood at once. Ethan looked away. For the first time all day, he would not meet Richard's eyes. Then what was? Richard demanded. Nobody answered immediately. The attorney opened one final encrypted document. A low processing tone echoed from the speakers. Everyone watched the loading bar crawl across the screen. 10%. 20. 30. The room felt frozen in time. Maya's pulse finally began to rise. Because she recognized the file name. She had seen it years ago, in a folder sitting on her father's desk the week before his business collapsed. 40%. 50. Richard noticed Maya staring at the screen. You know that file? It was not a question. Maya swallowed. For the first time since entering the boardroom, uncertainty crossed her face. Yes. The room went completely still. Richard stared at her. What is in it? Maya looked at the loading bar. 70%. 80. Her voice came out almost as a whisper. The reason my father lost everything. Nobody moved. 90%. Then the file opened. A single list appeared on the screen. Names. Dozens of names. Executives. Investors. Board members. Some were dead. Some were retired. Some were sitting in that room right now. And at the very top of the list, above every other name, was one person nobody expected to see. Nobody spoke. The list remained frozen on the screen while dozens of stunned faces stared at the names sitting at the very top. The glow from the monitor reflected across the glass walls and polished metal fixtures, turning the entire boardroom ghostly pale. Richard Whitmore felt his pulse hammering in his ears. Around him, investors leaned forward. Attorneys stopped typing. Even the quiet hum of the building seemed distant now. Then someone finally whispered the name aloud. Jonathan Whitmore. A shockwave moved through the room. Richard blinked. Once. Twice. His father's name sat above everyone else. Above Ethan. Above every executive. Above every investor. That is impossible, one board member said. Another shook his head. He died 11 years ago. Maya did not react. She simply kept staring at the screen. Richard noticed. You knew. It was not an accusation anymore. It sounded almost like a plea. Maya hesitated. Every eye turned toward her. Not with mockery. Not with dismissal. With expectation. The same people who had laughed when she entered now waited for her to speak. The pressure should have terrified her. Instead, she felt strangely calm. My father showed me that list years ago, she said softly. Silence. Several executives exchanged confused looks. Ethan's face tightened. Maya continued. He told me it was not a list of owners. Richard frowned. Then what is it? Maya slowly stepped closer to the screen. The wheels of her cleaning cart clicked softly against the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent room. It is a list of guardians. Nobody understood. Not yet. Richard stared at his father's name. Maya pointed toward it. Your father knew someone would eventually try to take control of the company. The attorneys listened carefully now. No interruptions. No smirks. So he divided authority into layers that could only activate under certain conditions. Richard's breathing slowed. Pieces were beginning to fit together. Maya pointed lower. Ownership transfers were never the final objective. The room remained frozen. The company was designed to protect itself. A senior attorney suddenly stood. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Wait. His eyes widened as he scanned the document. She is right. Several people turned toward him. He pointed at a section hidden beneath the names. This is not an ownership registry. It is a succession protocol. Shock spread across the room. Phones were recording openly now. Nobody cared. Richard stared at Maya as though seeing her for the first time. The housekeeper. The woman's security had nearly removed. The person everyone ignored. She had understood more than an entire room full of experts. Ethan looked trapped. No. His voice cracked again. That cannot be what it means. The attorney looked directly at him. It means the transfer was temporary. Silence exploded through the room. Richard felt the air leave his lungs. Temporary. The company was not gone. The room shifted instantly. Fear became hope. Confusion became focus. For the first time all day, Ethan looked genuinely afraid. Maya noticed it immediately. Richard did too. Then another realization struck the attorney. His expression darkened. There is a problem. The hope vanished as quickly as it appeared. Richard turned sharply. What problem? The attorney swallowed. The protocol only works if the final guardian approves the restoration. Nobody moved. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She already knew what was coming. Richard looked back at the screen. Who is the final guardian? The attorney's eyes slowly lifted from the document. Around the room, dozens of people held their breath. Then he spoke a single name. The entire boardroom turned toward Maya Johnson. And for the first time since entering the room, she looked genuinely stunned. Maya Johnson felt the room tilt around her. Nobody spoke after the attorney said her name. The giant display continued glowing above the boardroom, casting pale reflections across glass, steel, and stunned faces. The woman who had entered pushing a cleaning cart now stood at the center of a billion-dollar crisis. Richard Whitmore stared at her as though reality had rewritten itself. Around him, investors lowered their phones. Executives sat frozen. Even Ethan Cole looked lost. Maya's pulse hammered in her chest, but her face remained calm. There has to be a mistake, someone whispered. The attorney slowly shook his head. There is no mistake. His voice echoed through the silence. Jonathan Whitmore named Maya Johnson as the final guardian. A ripple moved through the room. Confusion. Disbelief. Ah. Richard glanced from Maya to the screen and back again. My father never mentioned her. Maya swallowed. He never mentioned me to anyone. The answer landed heavily. Richard looked at her differently now. Not as an employee. Not as a stranger. As a missing piece. The cold tension that had dominated the room for hours was beginning to crack. Beneath it, something deeper emerged. Regret. One executive lowered his eyes. Another quietly remembered laughing when security had been called. A third looked at the cleaning cart and seemed ashamed of ever seeing it as a measure of value. Maya noticed all of it. She said nothing. That silence somehow carried more dignity than any speech could. Richard slowly walked toward her. The sound of his shoes against the marble floor echoed through the room. Earlier, he had ordered her removed. Earlier, he had dismissed her warnings. Now every step felt heavier than the last. He stopped a few feet away. For a moment neither spoke. The room watched. Waiting. You tried to warn me, Richard finally said. Maya nodded once. Yes, sir. Richard looked down. The billionaire who controlled empires suddenly seemed unable to hold eye contact. And I almost had you escorted out? Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. The admission hit harder than any accusation. Maya could see the shame behind his eyes. She could see him replaying every dismissive look, every assumption, every moment he chose status over truth. You were protecting your company, she said quietly. I understand. Richard looked up. The forgiveness surprised him more than anything else that day. Around the room, the atmosphere shifted again. Respect replaced suspicion. Admiration replaced doubt. One by one, people began seeing Maya for who she truly was. Not a housekeeper. Not an interruption. The person who had saved all of them from disaster. Ethan suddenly laughed. The sound was weak. Desperate. This is insane. Nobody looked at him. That frightened him more than the investigations, the documents, or the evidence. For the first time all day, he had become invisible. Maya remained the center of every eye in the room. Yet she stood exactly as before. Calm. Grounded. Unchanged. The attorney cleared his throat. According to the protocol, only Maya can authorize restoration of control. A murmur spread through the investors. The power balance had completely reversed. Richard understood it immediately. The fate of the company no longer rested in boardrooms, contracts, or executive titles. It rested with the woman everyone underestimated. Maya slowly looked toward the screen. Toward Jonathan Whitmore's image frozen in time. Her father had trusted that man. Years ago, Both had tried to stop something bigger than anyone realized. The realization tightened her chest. Then she noticed something. A small encrypted icon blinking beside the restoration protocol. Her expression changed. Richard saw it instantly. "What is it?" Maya stepped closer to the screen. The room became silent again. Not fearful silence. Anticipation. She stared at the icon for several seconds. This was never the final instruction. The words sent a chill through the room. The attorney frowned. "What do you mean?" Maya pointed toward the blinking symbol. "There is another message." Nobody spoke. The icon flashed again. Once. Twice. Then the system automatically unlocked a hidden recording. Richard's heartbeat quickened. Maya's breath caught. The file name appeared slowly across the screen. A message for Maya Johnson. And for the first time that day, she looked completely unprepared for what was coming next. The room remained silent as the hidden recording began to play. The glow from the screen reflected softly across polished steel, dark glass, and faces that looked nothing like they had an hour earlier. No one was standing tall anymore. No one was smirking. No one was laughing. Maya Johnson stood motionless beside her cleaning cart, her eyes fixed on the image that slowly appeared. Jonathan Whitmore looked older than before. Tired. Honest. The room listened. "If you are seeing this, Maya," he said, "then it means I was too late to save your father." Maya felt her breath catch. Around her, the boardroom disappeared. For a moment, she was standing in her childhood kitchen again, watching her father work late into the night under a dim lamp. Jonathan continued. "Your father was the smartest man I ever worked with. He saw the danger before anyone else. He tried to stop it. When they silenced him, he asked me to promise one thing." The room was completely still. Even the phone's recording had lowered. "He asked me to make sure someone remembered the truth." Maya blinked slowly. Her eyes glistened, but she did not look away. Richard felt something tighten in his chest. All day he had been chasing documents, signatures, ownership transfers, and betrayals. Yet somehow the most important thing in the room was standing beside a cleaning cart. Jonathan's voice softened. "If you are hearing this, Maya, then you kept your father's promise." Silence followed. Long, heavy. Beautiful. Then the screen went dark. Nobody moved. Nobody seemed willing to break the moment. Richard slowly looked toward Maya. For the first time, there was no title between them. No billionaire. No housekeeper. Just two people standing inside the consequences of choices made years ago. He took a step forward. Then another. The sound of his shoes echoed gently across the marble floor. Finally he stopped in front of her. The room watched. "I was wrong." His voice was quiet. Real. Maya met his eyes. Richard glanced briefly toward the cleaning cart. Toward the uniform. Toward everything he had used to judge her. "I saw your job." He paused. "I never saw you." Nobody in the room looked away. Several executives lowered their heads. Others stared silently at the table. The weight of that admission settled over everyone. Maya could have reminded him what happened. She could have listed every insult, every dismissal, every moment she was ignored. Instead, she simply nodded. "We all miss things sometimes." The answer hit harder than anger ever could. Richard looked down for a moment. Then he did something nobody expected. He reached toward the head chair of the conference table. The chair that belonged to him. Slowly, he pulled it back. Then stepped aside. The gesture was small. Almost silent. Yet the entire room understood. Maya looked at the chair. Then at Richard. Then at the dozens of people watching. She did not sit. Instead, she gently pushed the chair back into place. "My father never wanted power," she said softly. "He wanted people to do the right thing." The room fell silent again. Different this time. Warmer. Lighter. Richard nodded once. He understood. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the first light of morning began creeping across the skyline. The city below was waking up. Inside the boardroom, something else had awakened too. Respect. The attorneys quietly began restoring the company. Investors spoke in low voices. Phones disappeared into pockets. The chaos was gone. Ethan sat alone at the far end of the room, forgotten by everyone. Maya picked up the handle of her cleaning cart. The same cart she had entered with. The same cart people had laughed at. She turned toward the door. Richard watched her leave. So did everyone else. No applause. No speeches. No celebration. Just silence. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Maya stepped inside. As the doors slowly closed, the morning sunlight caught the silver nameplate mounted beside the conference room entrance. Whitmore Global. For a brief second, her reflection appeared beside it. Then the doors closed. And the woman nobody noticed became the person nobody would ever forget.